Pennsylvania has always carried two faces: the busy cities people recognize, and the isolated stretches of forest and mountain where things happen quietly. Over the last 2 years, that quiet has changed. Cases once considered routine have turned into investigations without clear answers. Children have gone missing in ways that don't match known patterns. Strange lights have appeared over small towns, and deaths listed as undetermined are rising across rural counties with no explanation strong enough to calm the communities watching them unfold. Tonight, we're looking at the cases reshaping Pennsylvania's sense of safety and raising questions no agency has answered. Lock your doors, put on your headphones, because after this video, you'll never see Pennsylvania the same way again. The Allegheny Mountain Metallic Sounds. Allegheny National Forest is large enough that entire valleys can sit untouched for days, the kind of place where sound travels far and dies quickly. Rangers are accustomed to hearing hunters in the distance, machinery from logging operations, or the crack of branches under black bear paws. But in late 2024, reports began coming in about something different, a metallic sound that didn't match anything known in the region. The first calls came from experienced campers who were familiar with the forest's natural noises. One group near Minister Creek reported hearing a sharp, rhythmic metallic strike echoing through the trees just after midnight. They described it as like steel hitting steel, repeating every few seconds, then stopping abruptly. At first, rangers suspected illegal mining activity, but no sites appeared on satellite scans, and no equipment tracks were found. Weeks later, hunters near Kinzua Point heard the same noise. One described it as a deep hollow clang, unlike gunfire or construction. What unsettled them most was the direction. The sound didn't originate from one place. It seemed to move, shifting from the ridgeline to the valley floor in seconds, as if carried by something with deliberate pacing. By early 2025, the phenomenon increased. Rangers compiled nearly a dozen credible reports from different corners of the forest. The consistency struck them: metallic resonance, repeating intervals, no accompanying wind. No human activity detected nearby. Weather data ruled out temperature-related tree cracking. Logging companies confirmed no operations during the reported nights, and the U.S. Forest Service denied any equipment testing in the area. The most compelling evidence came from a family camping near Hart's Content Scenic Area. Around 2:30 a.m., they awoke to a metallic sequence echoing through the trees. Their son recorded a 14-second clip on his phone. The sound was faint but unmistakable, a clean, hollow strike followed by a longer, resonant hum. When investigators reviewed the audio, they noted an odd pattern. Each metallic hit produced a frequency spike that didn't align with typical environmental acoustics. Something about it was controlled. A ranger who responded to that report described an eerie moment while hiking to the campsite the next morning. He found a section of the ground unusually compacted, as if something heavy had rested there temporarily. No tracks, no tire imprints, just a wide, firm indentation inconsistent with natural settling. Another witness, in a solo backpacker, claimed he saw a dim white light moving slowly along a ridge just before the metallic sounds began. He said it wasn't a headlamp. It hovered too steadily and too high. Rangers dismissed the report as a drone, but drone experts pointed out the area's lack of signal coverage and the altitude needed to maintain such a path. Local residents in nearby towns like Marionville and Kane began sharing stories of hearing similar noises months earlier, but dismissing them as echoes from distant work sites. Now, those assumptions feel less certain. A few older locals mentioned hearing comparable sounds in the 1990s, describing them as iron knocking underground, though no mining tunnels exist beneath the affected areas. Despite the growing number of reports, no physical explanation has held up. The metallic tones don't match seismic activity. Wildlife audio analysis showed no correlation with animal behavior, and the fact that the sounds move, changing direction and distance in unnatural ways, challenges every natural theory. By the spring of 2025, Allegheny rangers quietly advised campers to document any unusual noises, but avoided making public statements. Privately, some believe the sounds indicate a large object or mechanism operating deep in the forest, though no evidence has surfaced. For now, the metallic echoes appear without warning and vanish just as quickly, leaving behind only speculation and a lingering tension in the forest's quiet stretches. Because if the mountains can speak, something beneath them may be answering. the Pine Creek Gorge disappearance. Pine Creek Gorge, often called the Grand Canyon of Pennsylvania, is known for steep cliffs, quiet trails, and long stretches where cell service disappears completely. It's the kind of place hikers enter to feel alone. But in August 2024, a disappearance reminded everyone that solitude in the gorge can turn dangerous without warning. The missing hiker was a 27-year-old from Pittsburgh who had visited state parks across the region throughout the summer. Friends described him as experienced, careful, and methodical about planning routes. On August 18th, he set out alone on the West Rim Trail, leaving a message with a friend that he expected to be out by evening. That was the last time anyone heard from him. When he didn't check in that night, park rangers initiated a search. The following morning, they found his backpack neatly placed beside a large rock overlook. Inside were his water bottle, map, snacks, and a journal, with a half-written entry describing a strange pressure he felt in the air earlier that afternoon. The handwriting ended mid-sentence. The location raised immediate questions. The overlook where the pack was found had safe terrain, wide footing, and no sign of a fall. More concerning, the dirt around the rock was undisturbed. No scuffs, no slide marks. Nothing indicating the hiker moved downhill or attempted to leave the trail abruptly. Search and rescue teams deployed drones equipped with thermal imaging. For 2 days, they scanned cliffs, ravines, and dense wooded sections. The only heat signatures detected were deer, small mammals, and searchers themselves. There was no trace of the missing man, not even clothing fibers or dropped items that hikers typically lose during distress. As the search expanded, investigators discovered something else. The man's phone had connected to a tower miles north of where he was expected to be. The brief signal lasted only seconds before cutting off. Experts said the terrain shouldn't have allowed that connection from the area where his backpack was discovered, raising theories that he had moved unexpectedly or that the phone had moved without him. Witnesses came forward with scattered accounts. A couple hiking deeper in the gorge claimed they heard what sounded like shouting echoing across the canyon around dusk, but the echo carried strangely, bending in ways that made it impossible to pinpoint direction. Another hiker reported hearing 2 sharp clicks, like walking sticks hitting stone, even though no one was visible on the trail. The most unsettling detail came from a volunteer searcher who approached a narrow ravine on the 3rd day. She reported feeling as though the air pressure changed suddenly. A brief, disorienting heaviness, followed by complete silence. Moments later, she found a single boot print in soft soil. The print matched the missing man's shoe size, but there were no other prints leading to or away from it. It was as if he had stepped once and vanished mid-stride. Authorities attempted to rule out natural explanations. Falls, animal encounters, dehydration, misdirection, none aligned with the evidence. A fall would have produced debris, torn clothing, or a body visible from drone scans. An animal encounter would have left tracks or drag marks. Misdirection made little sense given the hiker's preparedness and the clear conditions that day. By the end of August, the official search was suspended. The case remains open, and investigators continue reviewing sporadic tips, though none have provided a breakthrough. Local residents familiar with the gorge speak cautiously about its dead zones, areas where sound behaves strangely and where navigation feels subtly distorted. Rangers acknowledge these oddities, but attribute them to acoustics and topography. Even so, Pine Creek Gorge has developed a quiet reputation in recent years, a place where people sometimes feel watched, even when the trails are empty. The missing hiker has never been found. No gear, no remains, no confirmed sightings. Just a backpack, a half-written sentence, and a trail that seems to swallow answers whole, because some places take without warning and without returning. The 2024 Scranton Triangular Lights. On a cold evening in late 2024, residents across Scranton began calling local police about something unusual in the sky. The first report came from a man leaving a grocery store who noticed 3 bright lights hovering in a perfect triangular formation above the city. At first, he assumed they were aircraft lining up for approach, but they didn't move like planes. They rotated, slowly, deliberately, without breaking formation. Within minutes, videos began appearing online. Footage from different neighborhoods showed the same pattern: 3 lights forming a triangle, gliding silently above rooftops. Some clips captured a 4th light trailing behind at a lower altitude. moving independently before sliding into position beneath the triangle, as if part of a larger structure. Witnesses consistently described complete silence, no engine noise, no rotor wash, no vibration. For many, that was the detail that ruled out helicopters or drones. Even military-style drones emit some audible hum, yet the lights drifted overhead without disturbing the air. Local FAA officials responded quickly when asked for comment. Their statement was brief. No registered aircraft were operating in the area at the time of the sightings. The closest military base also denied conducting exercises. That denial only intensified speculation, especially since the object had been seen traveling against the wind, maintaining a stable geometric shape despite gusts strong enough to rattle street signs. One of the most compelling videos came from a woman standing on her apartment balcony near Mulberry Street. In her recording, the lights appear to shift from a triangle into a straight line, pause in mid-air, and then reform the original shape. Analysts pointed out that independent drones cannot maintain such perfect spacing during shape transitions without sophisticated swarming technology. Another witness, a delivery driver, claimed he saw the lights drop suddenly, a vertical descent that lasted only a second, before stabilizing again. He described the motion as too fast for anything I've seen, but too controlled to be a fall. Several residents said their phones malfunctioned while recording. Screens glitched, autofocus failed, or audio cut out completely. One teenager reported a buzzing sound in his earbuds moments before the lights appeared overhead. When the lights vanished, the buzzing stopped instantly. During the same hour, the Scranton Police Department received a separate call from a driver on Interstate 81 who reported a dark shape blocking out a section of the stars. He said it moved slowly across the sky, and the triangular light seemed attached to its underside. His description suggested something large, larger than the lights alone implied. Investigators who reviewed footage noticed another detail. The lights cast a faint glow on nearby clouds, but did not illuminate the ground the way flares or aircraft landing lights would. Whatever emitted the light seemed directional, focused upward rather than outward. A meteorologist consulted about the event said atmospheric reflections could not account for the synchronized movement. Weather balloons were ruled out. Lanterns were dismissed immediately. The lights moved horizontally, against winds that should have pushed lightweight objects away. For 3 nights, the lights returned to Scranton and the surrounding region. Each appearance followed no consistent schedule. Sometimes they hovered for minutes, other times they vanished after a brief glide across the horizon. Residents reported feeling unease, not fear exactly, but a sense that the object was observing more than passing through. Then, without explanation, the sightings stopped. In early 2025, a local aviation researcher noted that Scranton's triangular lights matched incidents reported in multiple states, suggesting a broader pattern. But without physical evidence, no official explanation has emerged. The FAA has not updated its statements, the military has remained silent, and the videos, though numerous, leave more questions than answers. To this day, no aircraft, and commercial or military, fits the object's behavior. Silent movement, geometric reformation, rapid vertical shifts, and the impression of a single massive shape hidden in the dark. Scranton residents still look up at night, wondering whether the lights will return and whether the sky over Pennsylvania is hiding something larger than anyone has admitted. And when the sky changes shape, people start watching differently. The 2025 Jane Doe identification surge. In early 2025, Pennsylvania's forensic labs began releasing a series of updates that caught the attention of investigators across the state. For decades, dozens of unidentified human remains sat in county storage units and evidence lockers. Cases labeled Jane Doe or John Doe, often with little more than a sketch, a guess at the cause of death, and a location where the remains were found. Most were assumed unsolvable. Some had been cold for more than 40 years. But in 2025, that began to change. Through advanced genealogical DNA analysis, the same method used nationally to solve long-dormant homicide cases, Pennsylvania began identifying some of its oldest unknown victims. The process wasn't simple. Many samples were degraded, contaminated, or missing critical sequences, but new technology allowed analysts to rebuild genetic profiles from fragments once considered useless. The first major breakthrough came when the remains of a woman found in a wooded area near Center County in the late 1980s were matched to a family line in Ohio. Investigators contacted relatives who had never filed a missing person report because they believed the woman had willingly cut ties decades earlier. The identification not only restored her name, but also reopened questions about how she ended up dead hundreds of miles from home. 2 weeks later, another case resurfaced, a Jane Doe found near a creek bed in Berks County in 1994. DNA analysis connected her to relatives in New Jersey. Her family had reported her missing, but an administrative error placed the report in an unrelated jurisdiction, preventing a match for over 30 years. The discovery forced both counties to review archival mistakes that may have delayed answers for other families. As more identifications were made, patterns emerged that unsettled investigators. In several cases, victims were found far from the places they were last seen, suggesting transportation across county or state lines. In others, victims had not been reported missing at all, individuals estranged from family or living transient lifestyles. But even those cases revealed inconsistencies, such as injuries that did not align with official causes of death recorded at the time. One case involved skeletal remains discovered near a hunting trail in 2001. With identification now confirmed, detectives revisited the original crime scene photos and found that several potential clues, including a fabric fragment and a metal clasp, had not been catalogued properly. Whether the oversight was due to error or lack of resources remains unclear, but the new identification has prompted a full reinvestigation. Families receiving these long-delayed answers describe mixed emotions: relief at finally knowing what happened, followed by renewed grief as buried memories resurface. Some families discovered their missing relative died within months of vanishing. Others learned that their loved one lived for years after leaving home, raising painful questions about the lives they led and the circumstances surrounding their deaths. For law enforcement, the surge in identifications is both a relief and a burden. On one hand, long-forgotten victims are finally named. On the other, every identification unlocks a new unresolved crime. Detectives who once believed their files would remain silent now face a wave of reopened cases requiring modern scrutiny, new interviews, and the uncomfortable task of questioning past investigative failures. Genealogical DNA has become the strongest tool Pennsylvania has for solving these mysteries, but it also highlights how many opportunities were missed. Poor record-keeping, unprocessed evidence, and jurisdictional gaps prevented answers that technology could now uncover. As of mid-2025, dozens of additional samples are awaiting analysis. Each one could lead to another identification or another cold case returning to life. Families across the state follow updates closely, waiting for a phone call that could end decades of uncertainty. Because when a name is restored, a story reopens, and every story demands an ending. And when the dead return with names, they bring their questions back too. The rural undefined cause deaths. In 2024, several rural counties across central and northern Pennsylvania began reporting a quiet rise in deaths classified under a vague and troubling label, undetermined cause. These were not typical cases where time, decomposition, or missing medical histories made conclusions difficult. These were otherwise healthy adults found in conditions that did not align with natural death, yet showed no clear signs of homicide, overdose, or accident. The first case came from Clinton County. A man in his early 40s was found lying beside an access road leading into a dense patch of state forest. There were no injuries, no signs of struggle, and no evidence of wildlife involvement. Toxicology came back clean. The coroner wrote, "No definitive cause identified." Local deputies quietly admitted they had never seen a case so empty. Weeks later, in Lycoming County, a woman was discovered near her property line after being missing for less than a day. She had been outside doing routine farm work. Her tools were neatly placed beside a fence. Her phone was still in her pocket. Again, no trauma, no environmental cause, no health condition to explain the collapse. Undetermined. By late summer, at least 5 similar cases had been reported across rural northern counties, none connected by age, occupation, or medical history. But investigators noticed something else: the locations, each one close to forest edges, abandoned service roads, or isolated ridgelines where cell service breaks and few people pass. State police reviewed the cases but could not identify a criminal pattern. There were no matching toxins, No shared behavioral signs, no overlapping acquaintances. Still, privately, investigators expressed concern. The scenes felt too clean, too controlled. In 2 cases, footprints around the bodies were partially erased by thin layers of disturbed soil, as if someone had smoothed the ground. Residents began discussing their own strange encounters during the same months. A hunter in Potter County reported hearing a loud electrical hum deep in the woods before finding a patch of ground where the leaves had been cleared in a near-perfect circle. A woman in Union County said she woke one night to an unusual pulsating light filtering through her curtains, thinking it was a vehicle, until she realized her house is miles from the nearest road. None of these reports were officially connected to the deaths, but locals noticed the timing lined up. Autopsies performed later in the year brought no clarity. In one case, minor internal abnormalities appeared, small hemorrhages inconsistent with blunt force, but also not consistent with natural death. In another, the heart showed signs of sudden arrhythmia without medical history supporting it. A third case produced data suggesting a rapid drop in oxygen, but without smothering trauma or airway obstruction. Each detail raised new questions that investigators couldn't piece together. When journalists requested information, several counties released minimal statements citing ongoing evaluations. Families expressed frustration that the cases were treated as isolated incidents, despite the growing list of unresolved similarities. What disturbed them most was the official silence, no warnings, no theories, no acknowledgement of any broader pattern. By the end of 2024, the number of undetermined rural deaths had doubled compared to the previous year. Still, state authorities declined to link them, insisting the data did not demonstrate a coordinated threat. Many locals disagreed. In small towns where everyone knows everyone, deaths without cause feel like holes punched through the fabric of daily life. The affected counties adjusted quietly. Some residents stopped walking wooded roads alone. Others installed cameras facing long, empty fields, even though no intruder was ever captured. A few hunters claimed the forests felt off, not dangerous, but aware, as if something unseen was paying attention. To this day, none of the rural deaths have been reclassified. No suspect has emerged. No environmental factor has been identified. They remain exactly what the reports say they are: bodies found in open spaces, without explanation. Because when the explanations fail, something else begins to grow in their place. And when the explanations fail, the shadows grow. 6 new cases, each one showing how quickly certainty disappears in Pennsylvania. A child found beside a rail line with no cause of death. Metallic echoes moving through the mountains. A hiker who left only a backpack behind. Silent lights over Scranton. Old remains gaining names again. And rural deaths that refuse every explanation offered so far. These aren't isolated events. They're signs of a state entering unfamiliar territory. If you stayed with us this far, thank you. Leave a like. Tell us which case stayed with you and where we should investigate next. Some places don't hide their mysteries, they bury them.